Hey Liam, it's great to see you again. You know, I was reading some comments before we started recording today, and one specific question kept coming up over and over again.
Really? What were our viewers asking?
They kept saying, "My English grammar is good," but sometimes native speakers react in a strange way. Why does that happen?
That's a fantastic question, because most of the time, their English vocabulary isn't actually the problem. Today, we're going to break down 5 of the biggest cultural blind spots, starting with a mistake millions of English learners make every single day.
I think that's something many learners never expect. They spend years studying, so they naturally assume that if a sentence is grammatically correct, it will also sound natural. Why doesn't it work that way?
Because communication is about much more than just correct grammar. Native speakers pay attention to the way a sentence feels just as much as the words themselves.
So the problem isn't the English itself. It's the hidden impression the sentence creates.
That's exactly what surprises most learners. Let's begin with our first phrase, which is "give me." It is probably one of the most common mistakes English learners make out there.
That honestly surprises me because I hear people say it all the time. Why can such a simple phrase become a problem?
The biggest reason is direct translation. In many languages, saying the literal equivalent of "give me" is perfectly normal when you're ordering food or asking for something in a store. But when learners translate that habit into English, the grammar stays correct, but the tone changes completely.
So native speakers hear something very different from what the learner actually intends.
That's exactly what happens. Imagine someone walks into a coffee shop and says, "Give me a coffee." The barista understands the request immediately, but to their ears, it sounds more like a harsh command than a friendly request.
Wow, I don't think most learners realize they're creating that kind of pushy impression.
They usually don't, because they're 100% focused on just communicating successfully.
So today we are definitely having a culture lesson alongside our English.
That's a great way to describe it. Every language has its own unwritten ideas of what sounds polite, natural, or respectful. Learning English isn't only about memorizing new words, it's also about learning those invisible social rules.
I think sometimes a person with a smaller vocabulary sounds much more fluent, only because they understand how real conversations actually work. That's fascinating. We've already discovered that one simple phrase can completely change the way people see us. I'm really curious to find out what the second phrase is.
The next one surprises almost everyone, because it's something learners often say during a conversation without thinking twice. The second phrase is, "You're wrong." Grammatically, there's nothing wrong with it, but in everyday conversations, it sounds much harsher than learners realize.
I can already hear many people saying, "But if someone is wrong, why can't I just say they're wrong?"
That's a very reasonable question. The answer is that native speakers usually try to protect the relationship before they protect their opinion. They want to disagree without making the other person feel attacked or defensive.
So they're thinking about the connection with the person as much as the topic itself. What should I say instead if I completely disagree with someone?
Native speakers usually soften their opinion first. For example, they might use chunks like, "I see what you mean, but I think there's another way to look at it," or "I'm not sure I agree. What if we tried this instead?" You see, you're still disagreeing, but you're inviting a discussion instead of starting an argument.
That sounds much friendlier, and I can see why people would be way more willing to listen to you.
Exactly. People often react emotionally before they react logically. When your disagreement sounds respectful, they're much more open to actually hearing your idea.
So disagreeing isn't the problem at all. It's just the way we disagree.
That's exactly the point. You can express the exact same opinion while creating a completely different, positive atmosphere.
And I imagine this happens outside the workplace too, like in casual chats. Something else I've noticed is that learners sometimes interrupt someone just to say they're wrong.
That happens quite often. The interruption itself already makes the conversation feel less friendly. And then adding a blunt "you're wrong" makes it feel like an attack.
I think many learners would be surprised that this lesson isn't really about vocabulary. So every phrase we're discussing today is really about making conversations feel easier for everyone involved.
That's exactly what connects all 5 phrases. None of them are grammar mistakes. They're small conversational habits that quietly influence how people respond to you.
We've already learned how requests can sound too direct, and now we've seen how disagreements can create unnecessary tension. I'm curious about the next phrase because I think almost every English learner has used it.
I think you're right. The next phrase is incredibly common. The third phrase is simply, "What?" Most learners use it without thinking because they didn't hear what someone said. The problem isn't the word itself. It's that, depending on your tone, it can sound impatient, annoyed, or even disrespectful.
I don't think most learners realize that. They're only trying to ask the other person to repeat what they said.
That's exactly their intention, but native speakers often hear something different. They say something you don't catch, and you immediately answer with a sharp, "What?" Even though you only need clarification, the conversation suddenly feels less friendly.
So this is another example where the intention and the impression are completely different.
That's exactly what makes conversational English so interesting. Native speakers aren't only listening to your words, they're also reacting to your tone, your facial expression, and the overall feeling of the conversation.
So not hearing someone clearly isn't the actual problem here.
Not at all. Everyone has to ask people to repeat themselves sometimes. The difference is that native speakers usually make that request sound much softer and more friendly.
I think that's becoming the main theme of today's lesson.
I was just thinking the same thing. Every phrase we've discussed so far has one thing in common. Native speakers naturally soften everyday conversations because they want the other person to feel comfortable.
That's a very different goal from simply speaking correct textbook English. But wait, what exactly can I say instead of just a blunt "what"?
Great question. Native speakers usually make it sound much softer. Instead, you can use quick chunks like, "Sorry? Sorry, could you say that again?" Or, "I didn't quite catch that."
Oh, I can definitely hear the difference now. Those expressions sound much warmer and more polite.
That's exactly why native speakers use them so often.
I love that distinction because it's something many learners never think about. Something else I've noticed is that learners sometimes repeat "what" several times just because they're nervous.
That happens quite often. The more nervous someone becomes, the shorter and harsher their answers tend to sound. Ironically, they're trying to save the conversation, but they're accidentally making it feel more uncomfortable.
I think that's something everyone can relate to.
Absolutely. We've all had those awkward moments when we didn't hear someone clearly.
I feel like today's lesson is really changing the way people think about fluency. We've already covered 3 phrases that seem totally harmless but can create the wrong impression. Let's jump into the 4th one because I don't think many learners even realize it's a mistake.
I think you're going to be surprised because the next phrase is something almost everyone says with the best intentions. The 4th phrase is, "I know." Most learners think it's harmless because they're simply trying to show they understand the topic.
Yeah, I don't think many people would expect that to be a problem. Why does such a simple phrase create a bad impression?
Imagine someone is taking the time to explain something useful to you. Before they even finish their sentence, you immediately cut them off and say, "I know." Even if you're telling the truth, the other person might feel like you're saying, "Stop talking, you don't need to explain this to me."
Ah, so the real issue isn't the phrase itself. It's interrupting the other person's effort to help you.
That's exactly right. Native speakers usually appreciate it when someone listens first and responds afterward. Good conversations aren't only about speaking, they're also about making the other person feel heard.
I think that's something learners don't practice very often, because most English lessons focus almost entirely on talking.
I completely agree. Speaking is important, but listening is what keeps conversations comfortable. People naturally enjoy talking to someone who shows genuine interest in what they're saying.
So, what's a more polite way to respond if someone is explaining something to me and I want to show I get it?
One simple habit is to just let the person finish speaking first. Then you can use chunks like, "I see what you mean," "That makes sense," or "I understand what you're saying." Even if you don't fully agree, those phrases show you're actively listening before you share your own opinion.
I really like that because it makes the whole conversation feel much more respectful.
That's the key, Emma. In American culture, conversations are like a game of catch. It only works if you actually let the other person throw the ball to you first.
That makes perfect sense. Well, we've officially reached the final phrase now, and you mentioned earlier that this one might be the biggest cultural blind spot of all. Now I'm really curious. What's the phrase?
The fifth phrase is, "calm down."
Oh, wow. That's surprising, because it honestly sounds like something that should help diffuse a situation, right?
That's exactly why so many learners use it with good intentions. The problem is that when someone is upset, stressed, or frustrated, hearing the words "calm down" almost always has the exact opposite effect. Instead of feeling supported, they feel like their emotions are being dismissed or ignored.
So even though we're trying to make the situation better, we accidentally end up making it worse.
That's what usually happens. When people are highly emotional, they first need to feel understood. If they don't feel heard, they're much less likely to actually calm down.
I think that's true in almost every culture and language, honestly.
It really is. Human communication isn't just about vocabulary. It's about empathy. Native speakers naturally choose language that shows they're listening and validating the person before trying to fix the problem.
Looking back at all 5 phrases we covered today, I noticed they all teach the exact same lesson in different ways.
That's a great observation, Emma. Every single one of these phrases reminds us that natural English isn't just about flawless grammar. It's built around making conversations feel respectful, relaxed, and comfortable for everyone involved.
Earlier, you promised one simple rule that could help us avoid mistakes like these. I think now is the perfect time to share it.
I'm glad you remembered, because this is the easiest habit you can start using today. Before you say something in English, pause for just a split second and ask yourself one simple question. Does this sound friendly?
I really like that because it's so incredibly easy to remember.
It is. And the more you ask yourself that question, the more naturally your brain will begin choosing warmer, softer expressions.
So, becoming more natural isn't about memorizing hundreds of complex new expressions.
Not at all. Sometimes improving your English is simply a matter of replacing one blunt phrase with another that creates a much better feeling.
I think today's lesson proves that grammar is only one small part of communication.
I couldn't agree more. People may forget the exact words you used, but they'll always remember how your conversation made them feel.
Before we finish up today, we would love to hear from you down in the comments. Which of these 5 phrases surprised you the most? And have you ever used one of them without realizing how it actually sounded to a native speaker? Leave your answers below because we'd really love to read them.
And if today's lesson helped you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, the next step is learning how to apply this natural English in real-world situations. It's one thing to know which phrases to avoid, but it's another thing to feel completely confident from the very moment you arrive in the United States.
Exactly. If you click right here on the screen, you can watch our next lesson all about handling your first day in America. It's the perfect next step because you'll see all of these communication tips come to life in real everyday situations.
Thanks so much for spending this time with us today. We hope this lesson helps every single one of your future conversations feel a little more natural.
Keep learning, keep speaking, and remember that sounding friendly is one of the fastest ways to sound fluent.
We'll see you in the next lesson.
Bye, everyone.